Alright, we are here interviewing Rob Kahn today, Royce Gracie black belt, owner of Gracie Tampa Schools. And first question, Rob, just tell us how you got started in Jiu-Jitsu and a little background.
I was in college in 1994, and historically I was a boxer. I boxed it, on and off in my teens, and I kind of heard of the UFCs because I think UFC 1 and 2 had gone off by then, and I didn't think much of them. I honestly thought the way they were advertised, I thought they were another form of professional. I thought it was like steel cage professional wrestling. So I didn't really think anything of it. A mutual friend had introduced me to a guy by the name of John Burke, who had actually trained for less than a year, maybe 6 months, a year, with Royce Gracie. And he thought it'd be a good idea for us to meet because we were both into fighting, which quickly turned into a sparring match, which quickly turned into me getting my ass kicked and choked and armbarred over and over and over again. And, to me, growing up, like everybody before the UFCs, fighting was about punching, kicking, standing up, and trading shots. It was, foreign to me and weird to me to have somebody, I felt helpless on the ground. So I was like, hey, man, can you show me some of this stuff? And he started showing me some stuff, and we became pretty good friends. Towards the end of that year, now it was 95, we were going towards the summer. He was going out for the summer to train with Royce, and he invited me to go. So I packed my bags and left to go to California, and we trained that whole summer in 95, like 12 hours a day. Came back as a blue belt, and it started basically a 20-year obsession with Jiu-Jitsu. Me and him were lucky enough to get become Royce's for one of Royce's first 5 black belts in 2004, and this is now my 10-year anniversary of being a black belt. 2 weeks after that, I moved to Florida, met you, and we started the Gracie Tampa takeover. And now we have 5 schools down here in Tampa, and we're having fun training jiu-jitsu every day instead of doing a real job.
This is true. Awesome. Okay, so starting training in 1994, you're one of the very few guys, right now who are that old school in the sport.
You call me old, aren't you?
I am. And so why don't you tell us what it was like training back then, back in the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, where even including myself, I wasn't even training then until 2003. So we don't know what it was like back then as to compare to what it's like now in 2014. How has jiu-jitsu changed?
In a lot of ways for good, a lot of ways for bad, I think. The good is guys get better quicker now, because you got to remember, I was out in California. I moved out there for a little while. I wasn't a big fan of the lifestyle in California, so I moved back to New York. Living in New York, it was even before Henzo had opened up. There was no such thing as YouTube. Couldn't go online to look at techniques. There was no other schools, no other black belts. So training was slower. You had to kind of figure stuff out for yourself, or you had to fly somewhere like California to go train with a black belt. Nowadays, you have a wealth of black belts in the country. You have videos, instructionals. There's a lot more information available quickly. So, and there's a lot better guys out there. When I was in New York, I was a blue belt. Everybody else was white belts. So the learning curve was longer. Now it's quicker. You show up at Gracie Tampa, you got brown belts, black belts, purple belts to roll with. If you have a question, it gets answered in 25 seconds instead of 3 months when you got to wait for the black belt to show up for a seminar. What I'm not as crazy about is jiu-jitsu's kind of split a little bit. You have guys now who are focused completely on the tournaments and the rules of the tournaments and some of the specialized tournament stuff. And back when I was training, it was the end product was always self-defense fighting or mixed martial arts. It was never really about 50-50 guards and upside-down guards and inverted guards and all that stuff. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think at the end of the day, jiu-jitsu is a martial art for self-defense, and it should be treated as such. You pull upside-down guard in a street fight, you're going to get killed. So that I'm not as crazy about, but hey, if that's your thing, cool.
All right. And as far as jiu-jitsu for MMA, those guys, some of those guys like Ryan Hall and other guys who do kind of those kinds of guards you're talking about are now crossing over and stopping competing in jiu-jitsu, and now they're doing MMA. So do you feel that that kind of style is, you know, if you're so used to going upside down and 50-50, you think that's going to be effective for today's mixed martial arts?
I think you fight how you train. And if every day in class you're going inverted or you're jumping 50-50 or you're doing that stuff, if you really think that you're going to do that only in jiu-jitsu tournaments and you're not going to do it under the pressure of a real fight, I think you're kidding yourself. You know, as soon as you're getting hit, you're going to run to what you know. And if what you know is going inverted or whatever, you're going to do it. You've seen it happen in UFC a few times. Guys will go inverted or they'll do a half guard sweep and try and come under and get their dome bounced with 50 elbows. And, you know, again, not that that stuff is bad, but I don't like losing the self-defense aspect of jiu-jitsu. So I typically keep my jiu-jitsu a little bit more vanilla in terms of, you know, I'm always trying to think about whether I'm going to get hit with an elbow here or a punch here, or, you know, that's not something I'm going to look to do because I'm going to get hit there, that type of thing.
Okay, good. So you've had the Gracie Tampa Schools for about a decade now.
10-year anniversary will be in November.
Right. So you've had a lot of, you know, good guys come up under you.
Great guys come up under me.
Yeah, 8 or 9 of them, you know, into the UFC. We have some Abu Dhabi guys who made it to Abu Dhabi. High-level competitors in all aspects. And so, you know, a lot of people don't have a coach like you or, you know, someone with as much knowledge as you do to teach them every day.
Or charm or wit.
Or charm or wit. So what would you tell someone who's maybe in Nebraska or whatever, or even anybody, even if they're under a great coach, you know, what are you doing? What are you teaching? What are your philosophies on how to get better in jiu-jitsu? If you're a white belt or a blue belt and you're trying to get to that next belt, what are more of your philosophies on that to get better faster? Because that's what everybody wants to do. Everyone's frustrated when they get tapped out or when they're hitting their plateaus, they're not getting good fast. What would you tell that person coming up?
Well, if you're in Nebraska, I tell you to move. But anybody else, I would say, you know, I look at jiu-jitsu, really there's, I think, 3 components of jiu-jitsu that you need to focus on and be good at and understand. And I think most people only really focus on 1 or 2 of them. And the 3 components are the techniques, which is what everybody focuses on, you know. And what starts happening is that it starts almost like it's an accumulation of techniques. They think it's about how many techniques they know, not the quality of how well they know them. The strategy to me is more important than the techniques, because, you know, you could know 100 techniques, but if you don't know when to apply them, you're not going to be very good, you know. I mean, you see black belts. I just heard Jean-Jacques Machado say this the other day on an interview. He was talking about how the longer he trains, the less moves he uses, because he just gets very, very good at the strategy of using the moves that he's really good at. And then the third component, I think, is how do you structure your training so you can get good at the strategy and the techniques. And I think that's what most people, the failing of most newer students is that.
Just give us one quick example of, I mean, you don't have to get crazy into it, but give us one example of how you would structure your training to get better faster.
Well, most guys, when they spar, they treat that sparring match like it's a life or death match today. Like, all they care about is how well they do today against that guy. They go full boat, try and kill him. They use whatever moves they know, and that's all they use, because, you know, God forbid the guy passes their guard, or God forbid, you know, the guy gets out of the mount, or whatever. You know, you got to use that training time to practice everything. You got to be in good positions, bad positions. You know, if you're looking, I always try, or talk to the students, if I'm teaching a triangle that day. In training, I should be seeing people going for that entry, to practice it, to add it to their arsenal, to get better at it, to polish it. And people don't use people use sparring more as a competitive fight than, you know, training time to polish the moves that they're learning, even at the expense of tapping. You know?
Why do you think that is?
I think anybody who comes to jiu-jitsu, for the most part, has a competitive streak in them. Otherwise, this art wouldn't be for them to begin with. And that competitive streak is good if it's harnessed right. But I think sometimes in the beginning that streak hurts them, because they're so focused on not, you know, they come in as a 6-month white belt or whatever, they're going against the blue belt and they fight them like it's life or death, and they leave proud, oh, that blue belt couldn't catch me today. Yeah, but all you did was do nothing, hold on for dear life, instead of trying to execute the stuff you're learning, get caught in the process, but learn from it, or get your reps in. I mean, you're good at the triangle because how many have you done in training? A million,
Yeah.
500,000? You know, you're good at the armbar because you've done millions in training. There's no secret to this art. It's reps. You know, when I'm rolling, I'm less concerned about how well I do. I'm more concerned about how many moves I can pull off. Now, a byproduct of that is sometimes catching and winning, but that's not really the goal. The goal is to get the reps in. I want 8 arm bars, 8 triangles, 10 omoplatas every time I roll, because I know that's going to polish the sword for me.
So give us an example, because I remember, you know, coming up as a blue, purple, brown belt under you, some of the drills that you would have us do, instead of just rolling to kill each other, what kind of rolling would you make us do?
You know, sometimes I would tell somebody, listen, you're only allowed to go for triangles this roll. Or you're only allowed to tap to the armbar, or go after arm bars. Or sometimes I would have you guys go and say, look, you have to let this guy tap you 3 times, he has to let him tap you 3 times. So it gives them a chance to, one, mentally to stop looking at this as a competitive fight. Because now if you have to tap 3 times, the competitiveness is kind of drained out of the position.
Ego gone.
Goes away. And start looking at more as a constructive way of getting realistic reps in. Because there's a big difference between, you know, me and you repping an armbar in just practice and repping it in that little window of time in a sparring match where I have the opportunity to catch you with it. There's a huge difference in that. That timing, that window, is what matters, what you need to see. And if you're, you know, if you're not looking for it, if you're so focused on winning and not being caught, you're never going to see that stuff in the beginning. You know, or it's going to take a lot longer to see it. You know, when we're talking about getting good quickly, sometimes you got to go a couple steps back to go 5 steps forward.
Right.
And I think that's the single biggest mistake. Guys come in and they just want to be killers.
So a lot of people who train under you and who know you, have rolled with you, say, you know, a lot of times that you say the word just flow when you roll with them. People are trying to just freaking, even rolling with you, just trying to just go nuts on you, and you say, hey, you know, you're not doing jiu-jitsu, why don't you just flow? So just explain that a little bit, what you mean by just flow.
I remember one of the best descriptions I heard about jiu-jitsu was when I first started. I'd asked somebody to come back from Brazil. I was like 6 to 8 months into jiu-jitsu, and they'd rolled with Hoyler. And I was like, what is it like to roll with Hoyler? And I remember he said it was like rolling with water. It just, nothing to grab, just disappeared. When you were strong, he was weak, and next thing you know, you're tapping. You know, and that stuck with me. And you know, it's one thing, like, you know, you're rolling with a guy like you who's experienced and relaxed. It's easy to have an easy flow roll with somebody who's flowing with you. The hard thing is when the guy's being excited, agitated, using his strength not to fall into that trap and start using yours. You know, so you almost have to kind of lighten up and burn his energy out, let him get tired without meeting that force with force. You know, it's much more of a flow. If he wants to burn that energy and try and be the hammer, I'll just relax and let them get tangled up in my legs and eventually catch them, is the goal.
So you've been around in the jiu-jitsu world for over 20 years.
Yeah.
You probably roll with a lot of good guys, a lot of technical guys. Who would you say, out of all the people you've trained with, rolled with, or even just learned under, would be the best overall technician, and second, the best overall teacher that you've learned under?
Best technician was Marcelo Garcia, hands down. That guy's sick, just sick. The best teacher, I love the way Royce teaches, you know, because he is big about teaching with the strategy. You know, he talks about the techniques, but he likes to talk about the big picture. I think a guy who doesn't get the credit he deserves for teaching, who is to me, by far one of the best teachers I've ever seen, was Royce Gracie. Royce Gracie is brilliant instructor. I remember back in the Gracie Academy, like, Royce's very, very, very basics oriented. You know, you take a class with Royce, I can guarantee you 2 things. One, you're not going to learn a move that you don't already know. You're going to learn the Americana, the Upa, the armbar from the guard. You're going to learn something very basic. But I will also guarantee you, you're going to come out of that class with a new perspective of that move that you never thought possible. Like, he is brilliant at breaking down the move to, like, the most minute detail. And also, like, I think back, I didn't have, Horion was not doing as much teaching when I was at the academy. Royce was doing most of it, but I think back to like some of the classes I had with him, they stuck with me 20 years later. Like a lot of the strategy stuff I talk about, a lot of that big picture mentality, relaxation, a lot of that came from Royce, but a lot of that came from Horion too. Like his ability to use analogy and break down the move for people to understand it is freakish.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, so you have all this knowledge. You've been training so long. You've trained under a lot of different people. You've been a teacher most of your career. Yeah, and so when I met you in 2003, or in 2004, obviously I got an email saying that there's a Royce Gracie black belt coming to town, which is initially why I was like, holy crap, I have to train under him. And then obviously when you meet Rob and you learn from him and you realize really how good he is and how much he really knows and how I could speak so much about how fast I got good just from being under him in 6 months. But so when I started, when I graduated college and learned more about different things, I was like, you have to share this stuff with the world. Like, you can't just be selfish and keep this in your brain and just a Gracie Tampa. So that's when we decided to write your thoughts in a book, and I helped you with that, called the BJJ Manifesto, which was our first thing we ever came out with. So just, most people know about it, but some people are, kind of like, well, what is it? It's just another ebook with videos in it. Just give us like a little breakdown of exactly what you're going to teach everyone in that book.
Well, the manifesto, I think, was really unique because Jiu-Jitsu, good, bad, or indifferent, I think a lot of people, when they teach Jiu-Jitsu, it's very easy to fall back on teaching techniques because it's easy. You walk in, you say, okay guys, put your foot here, scoot your hips out this way, bring the arm over, you got the arm over. It's easy to do, it's easy to show. What's harder is to talk about the strategy. And the strategy is the grease that makes everything move. But it's not like such a finite thing like technique. When do you go first? When do you go second? How do you outthink the guy? What are you looking for in this position? What's the big picture that you want in this position? And there's like certain guidelines in the strategy that I think are very definitive, but they're hard to talk about because they're not as easy as a technique. So I think a lot of guys, I've noticed, you watch Abu Dhabi, you watch the World Championships at the black belt level, you could see these guys using incredible strategy. But I think sometimes it's almost more like second nature to them. It's inherent. It's hard to talk about. Like great guy, you've always heard about how, some of the best athletes in the world, they're not necessarily always the best teachers. It's inherent in them. And I think the strategy was something that, because of the way I came up in New York, where a lot of it was me had to figure out some stuff myself, I was able to kind of figure out the strategies, and also with the help of Royce and Horion, who do look at the big picture. The strategies became a little bit more apparent to me. And I think those are the reasons why you got good quickly, and some of the guys at Gracie Tampa got good quickly, is because they start to see the grease in between the gears.
Right.
And to me, like I said before, the techniques are, you could have 100 techniques, but if your strategy is wrong, none of them are going to work. You have the right technique, you can use one. You have the right strategy, you can have one technique and pull it off all the time. So, what's more important to me? The strategy. And that's what the manifesto is about. It was really the first attempt of anybody in Jiu-Jitsu that I've seen to talk about it in a product.
Awesome. So the book then is more so about the strategies from each position, or how does that work? Like,
yeah, we talk about the strategies from the guard, from the mount, from side mount, all the positions, and there's multiple strategies. We try and break down as many as we can, talk about the ones that have been successful for us, the ones that I've lived with for 20 years, and again, I have a 20-year track record of seeing them work or not work, and finding out the ones that do and sticking with them, and at this point, I've had my mind made up on what strategies work and don't work, because I've seen it so many times that you can't convince me that they're not right, because I've seen them work too many times.
Yeah, the thing I like, and obviously it was 99% Rob with the book as far as the content. I threw my 2 cents in here and there, but I was more in awe just listening to, writing the stuff down as he's talking it, and the thing I like so much about the book and even the strategy is just it's systematic. Like, you get to side control, and now you have a game plan of exactly what you need to do. Like, it's not, there's no looking around guessing for what you need to do. It's, you get there, this is what you do. You do it every single time you get there, and it's a formula. You know, it's a recipe. You don't leave out an ingredient. You just do what he says, and it works.
It's the whole, you know, I always have that express, the Rolodex Jiu-Jitsu style, which I think is most, especially the beginners, that's usually what they do. They get to a position, and it's like they're going through this Rolodex in their head of what they should use.
Techniques.
Rolodex, and by the time they get to the one they think they should use, the position's already gone. You know, if you don't get there and say, okay, I'm going to do this to make him do that so I can catch this, you're not going to get it. You know, and that's kind of the grease that we put into the manifesto. That's the, you know, you could plug your techniques in. The strategy is the coherent part that's going to make it work.
Give us one little nugget from it. So let's say someone gets the mount. Just give us away something.
Okay, so if I'm mounted on somebody, one of the classic things I see all the time in jiu-jitsu is guys get mounted. I'm mounted on top of somebody. They start looking to see what mistakes the guy's making. Right? They're checking them out. Again, you know, there's a finite number of techniques you're going to catch from the mount. The guy's looking for it. By the time he sees something, the guy on the bottom knows what he's doing. He starts elbow escaping. You lose position. Or you wind up fighting the whole time, the whole position, because you were busy looking while this guy started escaping. He started the position. Now you're playing catch up. And you just took a dominant position and turned it into a non-dominant position. He's fighting to escape. You're fighting to hold. When we get to the mount, I create pressure right away. I get hold of the chin, create pressure on the head to make them defend their neck. As soon as the arms come up, now, first of all, they're now not looking for escape, they're looking to stop the pressure. And two, now their hands are going to start coming up slowly. I can start working for the arm, start working for the back. It changes the whole dynamic because now they're not looking for escape, they're looking to defend what time is the grip and the pressure we're putting on. And the whole dynamic changes and makes the submissions a lot easier.
Awesome.
I found the mount is one of the most misunderstood positions in Jiu-Jitsu because of that.
Absolutely. Okay, we're kind of running short on time here. Just in closing, Rob and I obviously, we created the BJJ Manifesto for all of you guys. We actually lowered the price recently to $27. Sorry to all the guys who bought it at the other price. But also we have, you know, we talk a lot about strategy. That has to be, if you don't know about us or Rob or his game, that has to be the first place you go, because anything else that you learn from him after that, you have to have that strategy in place first. I think that's very important. If you want to go a step further with Rob and myself, we created the no-gi library,
which are basically all the techniques that we like the best that fit our strategies.
That fit into those strategies from the manifesto. So it's
basically, if you watch the no-gi library, you're seeing every single thing that me and Matt use. Every single move that in every position. We didn't leave out one single move. That's our game, period. Exactly.
And then I realized that Rob is exceptionally successful with the armbar. So, and me and myself, and Rob as well, we really like the guillotine as well. So we also created something called Armbar and Guillotine Secrets, because there's so much stuff that people miss, and I see it, and Rob sees it all the time, when they're going for armbars and guillotines, which are two very high percentage submissions, where they just mess it up and the guy rips their arm out, or they mess it up where the guy pops their head out. So we give you all the secrets to that. There's a link below for that as well, armbarandguillotinesecrets.com. And finally, our newest one that we created, which is basically a directory of Rob said every move in the no-gi library. That's for our no-gi stuff, but for everything we know on everything, and we add videos constantly, is a virtual jiu-jitsu coach.
Yeah, and anything new that we come up with, because it's always changing, it's always tweaking. The second something gets tweaked, it goes right on that.
And that's a members area site, meaning you get a password and a username, and then you go in each month, and every month we add new videos, and
we'll be doing interactive seminars on there.
Yeah, very, very inexpensive. And like I said, the guy who doesn't even have a jiu-jitsu coach, I get a lot of emails from different people across the world, really, saying, man, I wish I can train with you guys. I wish I can move to Tampa to train with you guys. Well, now you don't have to. You can stay where you are and learn all of this stuff. That we're going to have videos of Rob rolling with his students, myself rolling with the students, and you can just get all that benefit, like I said, for super cheap. But In closing, thanks Rob for the interview. I'm sure a lot of people are going to benefit from all your knowledge on this interview, and if they decide to go a step further within the BJJ Manifesto and the other ones, you know, it's going to only benefit them.
I think you guys are going to love it. We put our heart and soul into the product. We've had great feedback from everybody who's bought it, so check it out.
Is there anything you want to say in closing to everyone, just about anything? All of our subscribers, all of our people who follow us.
Well, we really appreciate all the support, and we look forward to seeing you guys on the mat.
Boom.